today we'll be discussing about compounds. So we'll be having a detailed definition of what compounds are. Then we'll be discussing about the properties of compounds, and finally we'll be introducing you to the criteria to check whether a compound is pure or not. So let's start. To the main topic, we need some prerequisites. Okay, because that is going to help you understand the topic in a much better way. So here I'll be taking up some of the topics which actually you'll be learning in your third chapter, that is atoms and molecules. I thought that it will be more relevant if I introduce it to you here, so that you can understand the concepts of compounds much better. So let's begin with the prerequisites first. So here is a tabular representation, right? You can see a big table with like we learned about the elements. So here you can see various elements distributed in some pattern, right? So this table is known as periodic table. So based on certain properties or certain criteria, we categorize the elements, whatever elements we have, in a systematic manner, and that sort of a systematic manner or that tabular representation of the elements is known as periodic table. Though you don't need to know the details of how we are distributing these elements or and the properties or the aspects which is governing that distribution, because that is something which you'll be studying in detail when you'll be having a chapter altogether dedicated for that in your class 10th standard. So here it's just an introduction. I just want you guys to remember the first 20 elements with their masses. So I just didn't want to vaguely say that these are the first 20 elements. I just wanted to have you guys to have an overview of what exactly those 20 elements are and from where exactly they are coming. Okay, so these are the first 20 elements from hydrogen to calcium. Okay, I have put a tick over here. I guess you can figure it out. So these are the 20 elements which you need to remember: hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminium, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, argon, potassium, and calcium. So these are the first 20 elements in the periodic table. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to remember these first 20 elements along with their symbols and their masses. Now, how do we remember these first 20 elements? So let's figure it out. See, remembering the first 20 elements altogether is a tricky job, right, for a beginner. So here is a very simple trick. You just need to remember these three sentences and the job is done. You can actually get all the elements in that sequence, that first 20 elements. So the first sentence is, hi, he lies because boys cannot operate fireplaces. So from here, you can get all the elements from hydrogen till fluorine. Like in high, the H stands for hydrogen, then helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and fluorine. So just remember the sentence high, he lies because boys cannot operate fireplaces, and then you are done with these many elements. Then you can go for the second sentence, that is, new nation might also sign peace security clause. Okay, just remember this sentence, and then here comes the names of the elements. So that is neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminium, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, and chlorine. Then the third one is very simple, a king can, that's it. And then from there you'll get argon, potassium, and calcium. Yeah, here I have not highlighted the A, even that will be highlighted in red. Okay, so Ca, that stands for calcium. So you just need to remember the three sentences. First one is hi, he lies because boys cannot operate fireplaces. The second one is new nation might also sign peace security clause, a king can. Just remember these three sentences and you are done with the first 20 elements of the periodic table. problem is about the masses. When I say you need to remember the masses of the first 20 element, I mean that you need to remember the masses of an atom of that particular element. Now, you all know that atom is something very small. So how do we weigh an atom? Will we be doing that in grams? See, actually, just consider these two elements, okay, oxygen and carbon 12. Okay, so carbon 12 is one of the isotopes of carbon. Don't worry about isotopes. We'll be discussing that in very much detail in the upcoming chapter. So, if we are measuring the weight of an atom of these any of these elements, then the weight of oxygen atom, say, will be 2.656 into 10 power minus 23 grams, whereas that of a carbon 12 isotope, an atom of a carbon 12 isotope will be 1.992 into 10 power minus 23 grams. So you can figure it out that this is an extremely small value, right? So it will be very inconvenient for us to handle these values when it comes to calculations, or even say when we are using it for any other purpose. So we need to come up with something which is much more convenient for us, right? So what we can do is we can come up with a relative scale. What do I mean by relative is that you choose an element, fix a value for that, and then you can get the weights of the remaining element with respect to the weight of that particular element. Okay, so it is something with, so the remaining ones will be something which is with respect to that particular standard which you are fixing. Okay, so that is known as a relative scale. So here in this case we'll be using atomic mass scale. Okay, so let's see what exactly atomic mass scale is. So IUPAC actually recommends, it's an organization which deals with various rules and regulations regarding chemistry, like how do we name, how to name a compound. There are various set of rules for that, or what all units we are using for various measurement purposes and things like that. Okay, so that a universal, like a set of universal rules are being uh, what to say, being used by the people all around the globe. Okay, so IUPAC recommends that that carbon 12 isotope is consider to be considered as the standard reference. Okay, so when I was speaking about the relative scale, I mentioned that we need a standard reference, and using that we are going to give the values of weights to the remaining elements. So here our standard reference will be an atom of carbon 12 isotope. So we are fixing its value as 12 units. The mass of an atom of carbon 12 isotope, we are taking it as 12 units. Okay, so with respect to that, we'll be giving the weights to the remaining elements. Now, actually this concept we will cross check it by doing the calculations, but before that I need to introduce you to two important definitions which you need to understand very clearly. Okay, so don't try to mug it up, just understand the concepts. So when I say atomic mass unit, see, in the atomic mass scale, the unit which you are going to use is atomic mass unit, which is either represented in AMU or U. Both are accepted by IUPAC. So in that atomic mass unit, if I say one atomic mass unit, that means it is the mass of 1/12 of the mass of an atom of carbon 12 isotope. What do I mean by that is, if you take an atom of carbon 12 isotope and divide it into 12 parts, and then you take just one part out of it, then you weigh the mass of it. So that mass is 1 AMU or 1 U. Okay, so that is what is one atomic mass unit. Now, what is an atomic mass of any of the elements that we are going to use or refer? Okay, so that will be defined as the number of times an atom of that element is heavier than 1/12 of the mass of an atom of carbon 12 isotope. So uh, if you say that any particular element, say an element is A, and you say its atomic mass is 15, means it is 15 times heavier than 1/12 of the mass of an atom of carbon 12 isotope. Okay, so this is what the concept behind atomic mass scale. So let's cross check that how is it valid or not. So if we consider the masses in grams, these are the masses of an oxygen atom and a carbon 12 isotope. I mean that one particular atom for that element. And then since it was not convenient for us, so we considered opting for a relative scale, that is atomic mass scale, and with respect to that scale, we say that oxygen has a mass of 16 U. Okay, so now if I say what is the actual mass of oxygen, if I need to calculate the actual mass of oxygen, that will be 16 times 1/12 the mass of an atom of carbon 12 isotope. Okay, so it will be 16 times 1/12 the actual mass of an atom of carbon 12 isotope. So that will be 16 into 1 by 12 into 1.99 into 10 power minus 23 grams. That is the mass of an atom of carbon 12 isotope in grams, which is given over here. So as you calculate, you get a value, this value, that is 2.656 into 10 power minus 23 grams, and that exactly is the same value as this one, right? So that then you get to know that this definition is how this definition works, right? So what actually is that this value which is in grams for oxygen, you can figure it out that it's very inconvenient value. Okay, so in place of this, we are using the 16. It's a whole number, much easier to handle for any sort of calculations or references, right? So instead of this, we are going to use this in atomic mass scale. Okay, so I hope you got it. We discussed about the first 20 elements, how they are distributed in the periodic table. I showed you a trick to remember those first 20 elements. Then I discussed about how we weigh an atom and the scale which we are going to we usually use, that is atomic mass scale. So here are the atomic masses of the first 20 elements. Actually, you are expected to remember these 20, the atomic masses of these 20 elements. Don't worry. I mean, as you progress, you'll be doing a lot of calculations, mostly in the third chapter. So with time, you'll just remember it automatically. It will be set in your mind. But then still, if you can, do spend some time for this. Okay. Let's get back to our discussion about compounds, right? Yeah, in the previous videos where we were discussing about compounds, and then atoms and molecules, right? There we defined compounds in a very simple manner, and it was something like this. Compound is a pure substance which is made up of only one kind of molecules, right? So what do I mean by molecules? Let me take this word out of this definition, and then we'll look at it in a much more detailed way. So, what is a molecule? Actually, molecules means what? Two or more elements or two or more atoms of any elements which are chemically combined in a fixed ratio by mass. Fixed ratio by mass is an important concept here, right? So you have a molecule means it might be made up of two or more atoms of different elements which are combined chemically, okay, in a fixed proportion by mass. Okay, so let's look into the detail using an example. So here I am mentioning a very simple example, that is water, H2O. So when you consider water, what are the two elements that you can find? One is hydrogen with an atomic mass unit of 1 U, and then the second one is oxygen with atomic mass unit or atomic mass of 16U. Okay, so when you consider the ratio of their masses, it is 2U is to 16U, that is 1 is to 8. So water is a compound which is made up of two elements, hydrogen and oxygen, which are chemically combined together in a fixed proportion of 1 is to 8 by mass. Okay, so you can even try figuring out the mass ratios for various compounds. So this is how you can do it. Okay, so this is a detailed definition of what compounds are. Compounds are pure substances, first thing. Then these pure substances are made up of only one kind of molecule, second thing. Then what molecules are? Molecules are two or more elements which are chemically combined in a fixed proportion by mass. Okay, so to make you understand what mass is in terms of atom, I introduced you with the relative scale atomic mass unit. Okay, so I hope you understood it. Now let's move on to the properties of compounds. So the first property is a compound is always made up of the same elements combined together in a fixed proportion by mass. What do I mean by that is, if I take a compound from any source, say water, okay, so if I take water sample from this lake or water sample from, suppose it's raining, I just collected some amount of water, then both the samples will have water which is composed of hydrogen and oxygen irrespective of the sources, and they will be combined, that those two elements, that is hydrogen and oxygen, will be combined in a 1 is to 8 mass ratio. Okay, so it doesn't matter from where you extract that compound, it is going to be made up of same elements and with that fixed proportion by mass ratio. Okay, then the next property is a chemical compound is formed as a result of chemical change or reaction, and its properties are entirely different from those of its constituents. uh, this means that when you consider a compound, it is made up of some different elements. So the properties of that particular element is totally different from that of the elements from which it is made up of. Like, as we were discussing about water, let's consider water again. So in water, when you look into the elements which constitute the compound water, it is oxygen and hydrogen, right? So hydrogen is something which is very combustible, it's a combustible element or gas. Okay, and then oxygen is something which supports combustion. What do I mean by combustion? Is like burning. Okay, so oxygen supports burning, and when these two combine to form water, the compound, you all know that we use water for extinguishing fire, right? So the properties are totally different. That's what I mean by this second point. Okay. Then the next property is a compound cannot be separated into its constituents by simple physical means. It means that when it comes to compounds, you cannot separate that compound into their constituent elements by just doing some physical processes like filtration or evaporation or distillation and all that. Don't worry about distillation, we'll be discussing that in detail. I hope you understand what filtration and evaporation is. So such simple physical means cannot be used to separate a compound into its constituent elements, uh, whereas you have to use various chemical concepts or chemical processes to do that. For example, again we are considering water. If you want to separate water, that compound, into its constituents, you can use electricity as a means. Here you can see electrolysis is taking place, and through we are using electricity in order to separate water into hydrogen and oxygen. Now you don't need to go into the detail of the process for time being. Okay, then the next point is a compound has a definite molecular formula that you all know, and how to write the formula we'll be discussing in the third chapter in detail. And a compound has fixed melting point and boiling point. Okay, so this is an important point because we'll be using this property of a compound for some applications in the next upcoming topic. So do remember that. Then energy in the form of heat or light is usually evolved or absorbed when a compound is formed. See, when a compound is formed, either energy is absorbed or it is released. As you can see, like when we conduct a lot of reactions, you can see that we supply heat, okay, which actually drives the reaction. Or there are even reactions where actually heat in the like energy in the form of heat is released, okay. And even you can see there are reactions where light is involved. It's just that you need to introduce two components and place it in the sunlight, and you can see the new compounds being formed. Okay, so energy is involved when it comes to formation of compounds, and that energy can be either absorbed from the surrounding, that is taken up, or it can be released once it is formed into the surrounding. Okay, then a compound is a homogeneous substance, means that its constituents have a uniform distribution, even distribution. Okay, so compounds are homogeneous substances. So that's all for the properties of the compounds. Now let's move on to the next topic. Now, if we want to check if a given compound is pure or not, here is a very simple trick which we can use for that. So we all learned in the properties of compounds that a compound will have a fixed boiling and melting point, right? So actually, if you are given a compound and someone asks you, like, tell me if it is pure or not, then you can do that using that property. Okay, so if you are given a sample, first of all, consider identifying whether it's a solid or a liquid. Then, if it is a solid, then check for its melting point. If you find out that the melting point is sharp, what do I mean by sharp is that the entire solid melts within a temperature range of 0 0.5 degrees Celsius or zero point 0.5 Kelvin, then you can say that that compound has a sharp melting point. So if a compound has sharp melting point, that means that solid compound is a pure compound. Whereas if that melting point, if its melting point is what is whatever the value is expected, but once you check, you figure out that there is a decrease in melting point, or you can say depression in melting point, then you can conclude that it's an impure compound. Now, this concept of depression in melting point is something which you learn under colligative properties in higher classes. So you don't need to worry about that. For the time being, just remember this thing that when there is impurities in solids or solid compounds, there will be a depression in melting point. Okay. Now, if you if you are given a liquid compound, on the other hand, then check for the boiling point. Okay, so if you figure out that it has a fixed boiling point, then what do I mean by fixed boiling point? That entire liquid is distilled at a constant temperature. Means once it starts boiling, and then that temperature remains constant till entire liquid is turned into vapor. Okay, vapor or gaseous state. Okay, then we say that that particular liquid compound has a fixed boiling point, and that is pure. Whereas if it is mixed with some impurity, then there will be an increase in its boiling point, and that is known as elevation in boiling point, and even that is a colligative property. So that's what happens when there is an impurity. So this is a very simple trick which you can use in order to figure out if a given compound is pure or not. So I hope you guys understood, and so don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.